Welcome to Mondays Live with Elle and Janice. I am Elle Cole from the blog cleverlychanging.com, and we are happy that you are joining us today. Today, we have an exciting show for you. What I would like to share with you is a little bit about my blog. I am the blogger for cleverlychanging.com. It is a blog about personal finance, um, health and wellness, and also parenting and homeschooling. So if you would like to visit my blog, I would love for you to go to the top tab that says podcast and check out my podcast as well. That's really where I share most of my homeschooling information, and just check out the blog and look around. So can you kind of tell everybody a little bit about yourself? And
Hi, I'm Janice Adams. I'm an author and historian. I am publisher of the Backpacks Kids website and children's book, audio, and board game series. We talk about our websites. Mine is janiceadams.com, Janus Adams.com. And there you'll see a tab for Backpacks Kids, so you can check that out. That has wonderful resources. We usually say homeschooling for homeschoolers and non, because with so many people, this could turn out, it's not an easy time and it's not a good time, but in terms of what we've been through for hundreds of years with not having a curriculum that reflects us, this is a unique time in which we can begin to start at least this generation of kids in school with materials that are really supportive of and reflective of them. So I think many people will be getting into that. And we have a new book that will be out in September for them called Way to Go, Empowering Adventurous Young Minds. So I'm excited about that. And I will absolutely be talking more about that in the coming weeks. So today, for August 24th, with both of us being involved in entrepreneurism, wow, what a show we have.
all right, so today we are talking about the anniversary of the National Negro Business League. And I want you to kind of really just set the stage for us and let us know what the National Negro Business League is and why it's so important that we remember that time as entrepreneurs.
As entrepreneurs, it is marked such a turning point in the evolution of Black entrepreneurs. It is not that that had not happened before. In fact, it had, which is why there were enough Black businessmen and women to form the National Negro Business League. So it's not a start in that sense, but it is a major turning point. And, it came at the impetus of Booker T. Washington, and many people were really devastated by what he had done, accommodationism really to the racism of the time, in which he had given that really horrific five fingers on the hand speech that accommodated to segregation, saying that we can be as separate as the five fingers on the hand, but one when it comes to keeping our country going, that kind of thing. And Blacks were really devastated by that because it just sanctioned segregation. But for all that has been said about Booker T. Washington's turn of the century accommodationism, and I'm reading from my book, Glory Days, his philosophy provided a protective mask behind which he could exercise an unusual degree of autonomy in the midst of extreme oppression. What some would call accommodationism, others might call pragmatism. But whatever the label, no one disputes the fact that his singular focus powered the growth of Tuskegee Institute as one of the nation's finest colleges. With constricted freedom, he nurtured others from apprenticeship to professionalism. And among professionals, he sought those who would undergird his prominence and through him achieve their own. And he took credit as publicly as possible for what he was able to achieve. True to the spirit of a school that had begun as an agricultural college, what Washington had been about was a solid root system. One example of the skillful leveraging of his reputation was his work as co-founder and first president of an alliance of Black businesses. The year 1900 saw 106 reported lynchings. That means one every 3 days on average, and that's only the number reported. And several Black communities were stormed by white mobs. So among the most frequent causes of this terror was a fear that one group of poor people would lose their jobs and place in and lose their jobs and place in the world to another, that poor whites would lose their place in the world to poorer Blacks. And you hear that comment and that sentiment being proposed today almost as justification for the resurgence of racism that we are going through now, when we hear how middle America is afraid, but then you'll see t-shirts and conversations about Blacks getting too much and all of that. Unfortunately, these things are still carrying over in the United States. That said, adopting a posture of active self-defense for Black economic development, over 200 men and women from Florida to California gathered in Boston for a 2-day convention on August 23rd and 24th, 1900, 120 years ago today. There they founded the National Negro Business League and elected Booker T. Washington its first president. Among their primary goals, to ensure entrepreneurism, to encourage and educate Black young people for business careers. The date, August 24th, 1900, the theme, business, and the inspirational theme, cooperative economics.
I've heard that term before, cooperative economics, but I cannot pinpoint.
It is one of the principles of Kwanzaa.
Oh, that's where I've heard it.
Yeah.
That makes sense now.
One of the 7 in Guzu Saba, one of the 7 principles of Kwanzaa is cooperative economics.
Do you remember what the Swahili word is for that one?
I said it poorly, but the word is, well, for the day, it's Ujima, collective work and responsibility. And excuse me, Ujima, collective work and responsibility, and Ujima, cooperative economics. So let me just, since you asked, just give the 7 very quickly. The first day is Umoja, unity. The second day is Kujijakalia, self-determination. The third day of Kwanzaa, Ujima, collective work and responsibility. The fourth day, Ujama, cooperative economics. The 5th day, Nia, purpose. The 6th day, Kuumba, creativity. And the final day, Imani, faith. So principles to live by at any time of the year.
Yes, yes. And I think it's great to know that there is so much, it's a parallel between the principles and entrepreneurship and how we tend to build wealth in our communities, because entrepreneurship is a way for our communities to build generational wealth, which is
Mhm.
very important. And so I think, you know, we often talk about the principles only during Kwanzaa, but just like you stated, it's important all year round. So,
You know, for the fun of it, I'm going to read from that day because it's a day that we were talking about the history of it, 1900. Many people would not be familiar with Booker T. Washington, even though he was a prime mover whose name is carried forward. But when we say Motown, we all know what we're talking about. So for the fun of it, I'm going to read from Glory Days Again, uh, the day 4. And here is how Dr. Maulana Ron Karenga is the one who created Kwanzaa and essentially presented it as a gift to the diaspora, the diaspora, especially to African American peoples, to be held from the day after Christmas through New Year's Day. So day 4 encourages us to build and maintain our own businesses and to profit from them together. In December 1959, then 30-year-old Berry Gordy was at the wheel of his Cadillac with 19-year-old Smokey Robinson. Their progress was frustrated by the snow and their status in the record business. It was the wisdom of the younger Smokey Robinson. That's kind of why I decided I'd read it, because here we are talking about homeschooling and young people. Here is a business that we all know today that was inspired by a 19-year-old, Smokey Robinson. And he convinced the more seasoned Berry Gordy that what they needed and should dare to do was to start their own record company. From that prophetic trip, Motown was launched. It was a hazardous undertaking, coming as it did right after the payola scandals of the 1950s revealed the depth of corruption in the record industry. Indeed, as an aside, my husband, Max Roach, the musician, and with Charles Mingus as his partner, also started their own record label. And Max started his own music publishing company. Their firm, and I know this not from personal experience because we married years later, but from what he told me of it, their firm, their record company was taken down by the white men who ran the docks of New York refusing to unload their records, which they had to send abroad to get manufactured because no record company and no record production company in the United States at that time would manufacture the records of a Black-owned business. So that just puts this in a little context when we are talking, therefore, about what Motown really was able to achieve with the inspiration that 19-year-old Smokey Robinson gave Berry Gordy. So from that trip, as I said, in 1959, but coming through it ensured Berry Gordy's future not only as the independent record producer he already was, but as the impresario of the Motown sound. He launched the careers of a roster of talent so young and so impressive that almost 60 years now later, their music still dominates the charts. Ashford and Simpson, we're still dealing with them. The Commodores, Marvin Gaye, unfortunately gone. Gladys Knight, the Jacksons, the Jackson Five, that dynasty of a family. The Pointer Sisters, Lionel Richie, Smokey Robinson, who was then Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, Diana Ross and the Supremes, Tracy Ellis Ross's mom, the Temptations, and little Stevie Wonder, who's not so little anymore. While Motown's primary legacy is music, it must also be appreciated as a business. The company rose from a community base in the motor town of Detroit. When vehement segregation was the rule, major record companies relished blocking Black ownership for breakfast, and promoters suddenly became disinterested in Black talent when it was under Black management. Motown was not the first Black record company, but its existence forged a breakthrough. With its success, Motown nurtured ancillary careers in record and film production, promotion, management, and distribution. Indeed, Motown launched not only a company, but an industry with opportunities and tentacles in every field of the entertainment business and its related fields. Once again, the inspirational theme is Ujamaa, cooperative economics.
Wow. You know, they play Unsung on TV1, and a lot of times I'll watch the different episodes to really understand about the different artists back then. Because for me, I didn't necessarily grow up in that era, but because I'm the youngest of five, it is the music that I grew up with. So I'm just, you know, I really didn't recognize that Smokey Robinson had such a pivotal role. Because when you hear about Motown, they don't always, you know, you think of him being a singer, a part of Motown, but you don't necessarily think of him on the business side of it. So this has definitely been eye-opening for me.
And to date, he is one of the wealthiest singers because of that entrepreneurial spirit and owning some of his own music. So that when other people sing a Smokey Robinson song, he, as he should be, is paid as the composer.
Wow. So I mean, that's just genius, you know? And I think a lot of times the movement that we often talk about in history among Black people, it was led by people who were young, under 40.
It was for a lot of reasons. I mean, it's not that older people haven't come together and done amazing things, kept this going, but the energy of young people is critical to everything. In fact, it is where we see why we should be blended, because the older people have the wisdom and some of the knowledge, but the younger people have the energy and the I'm just gonna do it. And those things coming together make you unstoppable. And that is what we need.
One of the traits of entrepreneurs that really stands out in my mind is that entrepreneurs are willing to take risks. They're willing to do something that's completely out of the box to make their industry work and to set them apart. And I think that example that you shared with Smokey Robinson, just because there isn't a model, he wasn't afraid to start it. He was like, we can do this. You know, so I think that goes to say that entrepreneurs have to be willing to take calculated risks to see what will happen. And sometimes it pans out and sometimes it doesn't. But in the case of Motown, it definitely did.
And both of these examples, the founding of the National Negro Business League, 1900, 107 lynchings in 1 year, one every 3 days. We today know something of what that's about. 1959 was the energy moving forward. That's just 4 years after Rosa Parks, and the pushback against our empowerment in a country that was rooted in white supremacy. That was the real rule of law that we don't talk about, is the law, the doctrine of white supremacy. That's why, and I have to say it, to this day, Breonna Taylor's police killers still have not been held accountable in any way for what they did to murder a woman in her own bed. So that is the law of white supremacy that has governed this country's history. But in spite of that, we have kept keeping our eye on the prize of what we need to do for each other. 5 years before the National Negro Business League, the National Steamship Line had been founded in 1895 with a route from Richmond, Virginia to Washington, D.C. It was founded because we were tired of this disgusting racism of back of the bus, back of the car, in with the luggage, all that kind of nonsense. And so a group of Black entrepreneurs got together and created the National Steamship Company to go from Richmond to Washington, and it was a state-of-the-art steamship that was the envy of the white steamship companies covering a similar route. So we have to really, and we have to tell these stories because we hear people, number one, there's one group of people that will say, oh, if I'd only known. That is the most frequent comment that I get, is if I'd only known. So it's a sacred duty to make sure that we know and know soon enough and young enough so that we can act on it, and know late enough that we can bring our expertise, our wisdom, our strength, our whatever we have to support what those young enough are doing.
Yes, yes.
So I guess that's it for our show this week.
That's it.
That's it.
Well, thank you.
I'm Janice Adams, janiceadams.com, and
I am Elle Cole. So bye now.
bye.